So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be doing the first part of going through some past GCSE Maths questions related to rearranging the formula. Now, as always, I'll include a copy of the questions that we go through in this video, and I'll also include a copy of the mark scheme, as there is more than one way to write the final answer, and I'll also include some lesson links that go over this topic in more detail as links in the description. Now, before we get started working through some past exam questions related to rearranging the formula, let's just have a quick overview over what it is you need to know. Now, the first thing is that rearranging the formula is also known as changing the subject, as that's generally basically what you are doing in each of the questions. Now, questions can range in terms of difficulty as well as the number of marks available. So some rearranging questions might be worth 1 mark or maybe 2 marks when you've got basic 1 or 2 step rearranging, or it could be worth 3 or 4 marks or even 5 marks if there appears to be fractions, brackets, powers and roots, or where x is the denominator or x appears twice, where x is the letter that you want to rearrange to make the subject. Now, if you're wanting more details and further practice or understanding of each of these particular aspects of rearranging the formula, then I will include some lesson links in the description below which go through these in greater detail. Now, before we get started, a little reminder that if you're wanting access to these questions, then there is a link in the description below. Now, with the answers that I write for these particular questions, there is always going to be more than one way of writing the answer. So I will include the mark scheme. So if your answer is different to what I show on the screen, or you've used a different method, it still may be correct. So just refer to the mark scheme to see if it's an acceptable answer. So looking at question 1, it says rearrange y equals 4x minus 9 to make x the subject. So for this, what we want to do is basically solve for x. So if I can just get a pen that works, let's go for this one here. So first thing I want to do is take away the 9, well, by adding the 9, so it's going to be y plus 9 equals 4x, and then I need to get rid of the 4, so it's y plus 9 divided by 4 equals x. So x equals y plus 9 divided by 4. Now again, try and use fractions and try and use brackets where possible, just to make your answer a little bit more obvious, but also for you not to make any silly errors in terms of your presentation. Moving on to question 2, it says rearrange y equals mx plus c to make x the subject. So again, first get rid of the c, so it's going to be y minus c equals mx. And then we need to get rid of the m, so we do that by dividing, so it's going to be y minus c, all divided by m equals x, so x equals y minus c divided by m. Question 3, it then says rearrange y equals x minus x over 4 plus 8 to make x the subject. So again, first thing I want to get rid of is the 8, and I do that by taking it away. And then I want to get rid of the 4, and I do that by multiplying everything on the left hand side by 4, so that becomes 4y minus 32 equals x. So x equals 4y minus 32. Now if you wanted to, you could have left it factorized, so you could write x equals 4 lots of y minus 8. And again, that's just another prime example of where you can have 2 different looking answers, but both of them still be correct. Moving on to question 4, it says rearrange g equals h plus 5 over 3 to make h the subject. So again, what I want to get rid of first is the 3. I do that by multiplying by 3, so that becomes 3g equals h plus 5. Then want to get rid of the 5, so it becomes 3g minus 5 equals h. So h equals 3g minus 5. Then for question 5, it says that a triangle has sides of f plus 7, 3f plus 1 and 2f minus 3. Write down and simplify an expression for the perimeter of the triangle. So for the perimeter, what I need to do is just simply add all of these 3 things together. So here I've got f plus 7 plus 3f plus 1 plus 2f minus 3. So looking at the f's and including the signs, I've got 1 plus 3 plus 2, which is 6. And looking at the numbers, I've got 7 plus 1, which is 8. Take away 3, which is positive 5. It then says rearrange your formula to make f the subject. One thing I forgot to do is write equals p. Again, so here I've got p equals 6f plus 5. So get rid of the 5 first, and then divide everything by 6. So f equals p minus 5 all divided by 6. Then for question 6 it says rearrange 3p equals t over y to make y the subject. So for this, what I'm going to do is if I take the y over to the other side, so I end up with 3py equals t. Then if I put brackets around the 3p, now the 3p is being multiplied by y, so the opposite would be to divide by 3p. So then I get y equals t over 3p. Then moving on to question 7, it says rearrange d equals the square root of x to the power 5 to make x the subject. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of the square root, which is by squaring. So that then becomes d squared equals x to the power of 5. Then how do I get to rid of the power of 5? Well, I 5 root it. So it's going to be the fifth root of d squared equals x. So x equals the fifth root. Make sure your 5 looks like a root rather than a third of d squared. Ultimately, you could also use indices. So I could write d to the power of 2/5. Then moving on to question 8 says rearrange m equals n over p plus q to make p the subject. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this plus q, and we do that by taking away q. So we've got m minus q equals n over p. So then if I take the p over, I get p minus m minus q equals n, and then take this bracket over, so p equals n divided by m minus q. Alternately, from this root here, if I created a triangle, I've got n, p, and I've got m minus q. Then to make p the subject, well, that's going to be n over m minus q equals p. So p equals n over m minus q. Moving on to question 9, it says rearrange g equals 1 over root h minus 3. So again, one thing you could do, there's a couple of ways in which you could do this. Well, if I just label this as method 1, if I take this denominator over to the other side, I end up with g and then root h minus 3 equals 1. Then take the g over, so I end up with root h minus 3 equals 1 over g. Then get rid of the square root, so h minus 3 equals 1 squared, which is 1, and g squared. And then take the 3 over, so h equals 1 over g squared plus 3. Now another way of doing this is to take the 1 over, so I end up with 1 over g equals root h minus 3, and then you can then you're in the same position as you were here, and then you can then get your answer. So it's entirely up to you which method you go, but hopefully you do get the correct answer of h equals 1 over g squared plus 3. Then moving on to question 10, it says rearrange x squared plus equals h squared minus y squared to make h the subject. So again, get rid of the y squared, so x squared plus y squared equals h squared, and so h then equals the square root of x squared plus y squared. Now you can't simplify that, so just leave it as the root of x squared plus y squared. Then for our last question, it says rearrange d squared minus 16a equals 9 to make d the subject. So again, first you want to get rid of is the minus 16a, so d squared equals 9 plus 16a, and then d equals the square root of 9 plus 16a. So d equals 9 plus 16a, all square rooted. And there we go.